Welcome to the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Join us each week as we sit down with the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management and author of Your Fiscal Physical, Ryan Nelson. Tune in to gain valuable insights and practical tips as we simplify complex financial concepts into digestible lessons. From budgeting to retirement planning, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering financial literacy.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Fiscal Physical Podcast. I am joined by the published author of Your Fiscal Physical, 7 Keys to Becoming Financially Fit. Find that book on Amazon, Mr. Ryan Nelson. Ryan, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty solid, my man. Pretty solid. You know, thankful another day, another week above ground. You know, can't go wrong there. How are book sales, by the way?
I haven't checked.
All right.
I'm sure they're good.
I'm sure they're through the roof. I'm sure it's sold out, if I'm not mistaken there. So, but I shameless plug for the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management. I actually went back and I started rereading your book the other night. Nice. Yeah. Because I was like, it's been a while. I pick out passages to like think about of this podcast, but like, just the way you can break things down, man. It's cool. Like, obviously, there's a lot of financial jargon and stuff that is a little bit, it has to be confusing because that's what it is, but the way that you can use metaphors and these certain things to like relate it to people, it's really cool. Really
nice.
cool.
Awesome.
So,
well, I'm glad you're enjoying it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but today we're going to talk about a topic I don't think was covered in your book. If it was, totally missed it. We're going to talk about tariffs today. So if you tuned in last week, we talked about inflation. Tariffs is another kind of hot topic, if you say, a word I didn't really know what it meant. Maybe still don't really know exactly what it meant until like the last election cycle really came up. It got kind of jammed down my throat. So I'm hoping this podcast, you can kind of break this down for the listeners, Ryan, and kind of talk about what tariffs are, what they aren't, and kind of how they affect all the parties involved. Yeah,
let's do it. So tariffs are an interesting thing. It's kind of funny. I think that they've almost become politicized.
Yes.
Right? Like,
yeah, definitely.
Like in that last election, and it almost feels like now one political party likes tariffs, one political party doesn't like tariffs, and it's like, yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I'll tell you, I mean, my personal take on it isn't very exciting, but I just honestly believe tariffs are not inherently good and tariffs are not inherently bad. Tariffs are just an economic tool, and they both have both positive and negative repercussions. And there's nothing, I think they've been a little bit blown out of proportion. And again, I don't think they are good. I don't think they are bad. They are just a tool that has both pros and cons, like most things in life. And so what is a tariff? A tariff is a tax on imported or exported goods. So a tariff is a tax on imported or exported goods, right? And so it's a way, you can think of the tariffs as a way for the government to regulate foreign trade, right? And typically it's used in a way to try to protect domestic, so basically in our country's industries. So one thing I've heard is, that some people will say that it's a tax to the consumer.
Sure.
I get what they're saying. That's not technically accurate. It's not a tax to the consumer. It's a tax on the import, which is not the same thing. I think sometimes people try to oversimplify these things and to prove a point. And I understand where they're going with that. But again, it's not technically accurate. And I think it can paint the wrong picture. And so again, I would argue, like, if we're going to talk about tariffs, let's talk about them the right way. It's a tax on imports. It's not a tax on the consumer. It's a tax on imports. Now, what is the ultimate impact of a tax on imports? It could trickle down and increase the consumer's cost, right? So it could increase inflation. We talked about inflation last week. So there could be some implications to the consumer. That's for sure, but it's not a tax on or to the consumer. It's a tax on the import, which is maybe a small nuanced difference, but to me, I think is important.
Oh, I think that's a huge difference just in general, because you can, if it's a tax on the import specifically, then the company that's maybe importing that, then they have maybe the choice to then, where do we eat this ourselves? Do we pass this on to the consumer? But it's not directly like, hey, cool. If a tariff gets implemented, it's not like, okay, you are now being taxed more specifically.
Exactly. Yep. Good point. And what I would say is, so the way to think about this is the company buying the goods pays the tariff, right? So if country A and country B both have equal tariffs on each, implemented, and it's say a 20% tariff, and they're buying a good that costs $100, then if I'm live in country A and I want to buy a good from country B, and again that tariff is 20%, I would buy the $100 good, and I would pay a 20% tariff to that government, and vice versa, right? And so so let's just walk through an example.
Sure.
So let's pretend I'm a shirt salesman, right?
Nice.
And so I'm buying shirts, and maybe I'm selling these shirts for $15, right? So I got to go out and I got to find shirts to buy so that I can sell them for $15, right? And so I go look, and maybe I find some shirts overseas that are $10. And so I say, okay, perfect. I'm going to buy these shirts overseas for $10, and then I'm going to sell them here for $15.
Sure.
Right. That's like a pretty common business model, right? You could substitute shirts for lots of different things. But so I'm in the business of shirts. I buy them for $10. I sell them for $15. I got a good little business going on here. And maybe as I was doing my due diligence to find where to source my shirts, I noticed there were some companies here in the United States, that made them they would sell them to me for $11, but I'm like, I can get them overseas for 10. I'm not going to pay 11.
Right.
That's just straight eating into my margins. If I sell them if I buy them for 11, sell them for 15, I only make $4 a shirt versus $5 a shirt. And so then all of a sudden, let's pretend a tariff gets implemented, and we'll say it's a 20% tariff on these shirts, right? And you'll hear people talk about these retaliatory tariffs.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And so what that typically means is, like, if one country says, hey, we're going to put a tariff on basically you, so if you buy our goods, you'll pay a tariff. Sometimes the other country will say, okay, fine. Then if you buy our goods, you're going to pay a tariff, right?
Exactly. Eye for an eye.
Yeah, exactly. And so it doesn't seem, I don't know, in my small experience with tariffs, it seems like it kind of common. It almost seems like there's sometimes these like handshakes deals where it's like the countries neither of them have a tariff or they both have a tariff. It's like, hey, if we can work this out, like, let's just eliminate the tariffs, make trade between our countries easier, or no, we'll have tariffs then. But either way, so now let's say a tariff gets implemented. So I'm looking to buy these shirts for $10. And so now I'm buying these shirts for $10, but I got to pay a 20% or $2 tariff. So now it costs me $12 effectively to secure these shirts. I can still sell them for my $15, but now I have a decision. I was making $5 per shirt before. Should I continue to sell them for $15 and now only make $3 a shirt? Or should I sell them for $17? Then I'll still make $5 a shirt.
Right.
Or maybe I sell them for $16 and now I make $4 a shirt, right? And you can see how me as the business owner, none of those three solutions are necessarily better or worse. I got to figure out like what makes sense for my business. If I increase my shirts and I start selling them for $17, maybe nobody will buy them.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like, well, I got to keep them at $15 and just I make $3 profit. My profit is smaller, but if I increase the price, people are going to stop buying my shirts. That's a potential risk, right?
Right.
Or I say, nah, people are going to want to buy my shirt, so I increase the price to $17. I still make the $5. My revenue is exactly the same, or my profit's exactly the same. But now the clients, you can see in this case, now the burden to the client, it costs them $17, right? So that's why some people will say, again, we mentioned earlier, it's a tax to the consumer. If I buy that shirt for $10, I pay a $2 tariff, so I'm paying a total of $12. I still want $5 profit. I charge the consumer $17. Now you can kind of feel like, okay, the consumer says, hey, what's the deal here? I'm the one paying more money, right? But again, it's important to realize that tax wasn't actually on that consumer. The tax was on me, the business owner.
Right.
Me, the business owner. I made the best decision, that I thought possible to run my business. In supply and demand, we talked about that before. That will sort of dictate what these prices actually can be. So again, if I try to raise my prices too much and there's no now demand for a $17 shirt, nobody's going to buy them. I am forced to drop my prices down to maybe $16.
Sure.
Where maybe now me and the consumer both share the burden. And so I only make $4 profit. The consumer pays $1 more. So the consumer's paying $1 more. I'm making $1 less. We're kind of splitting the difference, right? And so the reality is when tariffs get implemented, sort of all three of these scenarios actually take place, right? Some companies are able to pass the entire burden on to the client. Some companies eat the entire burden themselves, and some companies share the burden with the client. So that's one thing to think about. Like, it's not just a flat, it's all being applied to the client. Every business and every industry is going to be a little different. But the other thing to think about, you may have remembered I said earlier, there were shirts available for sale in the United States that only cost me $11 to buy.
Yep.
So one now potential thing could do is, okay, these tariffs got implemented. It cost me $10, but now I'm really paying $12 when you include the $2 tariff to get these shirts. Now it might make sense for me to reevaluate where I'm sourcing my shirts from. And I might say, okay, it used to make sense for me to source these shirts overseas. Now maybe it makes sense for me to source these shirts in the U.S.
Sure.
And so now I'm going to start buying them for $11 because overall $11 is less than $12, right? And so the theory behind a tariff is that it helps, again, I mentioned that it quote unquote protects domestic industries. So what it does is it incentivizes me to now buy from the U.S. company, right? Which puts more dollars into U.S. GDP. It creates maybe more jobs for U.S. employees who could then maybe buy more shirts, right? Or pay more money into our tax system, right? And so again, I don't think there is any right or wrong here. You can see how as we kind of explain in details how this whole thing plays out. There are different pros and there are different cons, and every tariff in every industry is going to kind of affect the consumer slightly differently. Sure. And so, yeah, it's just, it's something to think about. Again, I don't think they are good. I don't think they are bad. It is a way for the government to generate revenue. The hopes would be, like, the selling point of them would be that other basically other countries or citizens of other countries would be paying into sort of effectively this tax, right? The catch is, if we implement tariffs on them, they're probably implementing tariffs on us, and then we're also probably paying some taxes back into them, right? So one thing to consider might be, is your country a net importer or a net exporter? But then again, how it kind of cycles down is, will it create more jobs in the U.S.? The answer could be yes, it could be no. It's a very, very complicated question.
Yeah, definitely.
But you can definitely understand the logic about how that could take place.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's a great breakdown of staying relatively neutral on the issue, because it depends on the company, depends on the amount of the tariff. It depends on so many different factors.
Oh, yeah.
To just say blanket that tariffs are bad or tariffs are good, you can't really say that.
No.
Plus, I would also like to point out for myself, one who's never really looked into tariffs before, these aren't a new thing. It's not like it's like a new idea. I feel like it gets thrown around like, oh my gosh, like I didn't hear the word tariff in in 2020 or whatever, like at least not regularly, but it's been a thing for a very, very long time. Absolutely. So I think that you can kind of, see, at least that breaks it down of how the different options that are available for these tariffs. And like you said, like the retaliatory tariffs are what kind of get, well, if you're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And it's just like, all right, are we just, maybe we take a step back and kind of figure out what's best for everybody versus getting in a pissing contest in certain cases. But it is. Yeah, it is funny. But at the end of the day, again, it's just a tool for the government to regulate foreign trade. And again, it's a tax on imported goods effectively. Love it. Awesome. As always, appreciate the breakdown there, Ryan. We're going to go ahead and pause on, and we'll be back on the other side here. Everybody hang tight.
And now, to put the personal in personal finance.
Welcome back, everybody, to this side of the Fiscal Physical podcast. We're into the personal section here. And, Ryan, I'm going to ask you, what's a TV show that you could or have binge watched over and over again? So something that really is near and dear to your heart, or you just find really great. Like, I mean, I don't know about you. I don't have a ton of time on my hands to binge watch, but maybe I did in the past, or if I get the opportunity, I'm like, I'm going to fire this up. Like, I'm curious to see your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I don't think I've ever watched a single TV show twice.
Really?
No. So I don't know that. I guess the answer is none.
Sure.
But there's very few TV shows I've even watched every episode of.
Yeah.
But I think some of the ones, Sunny in Philadelphia. Actually, I haven't even. I think they're still making.
Yeah, they're still cranking.
So never mind. I haven't even seen every episode of that then. But I saw a lot of episodes.
Right.
Prison Break. I guess same thing. I saw every episode of maybe the first 2 seasons, but then I think they came out with more seasons. Arrested Development, same thing. Actually, I know they came out with new seasons too. So I guess I haven't even seen all the episodes of any season. but those are some of my classics, like Sunny in Philadelphia and Arrested Development. I think are funny. Prison Break, I just liked back in the day. Mm-hmm. But my single favorite show I think of all time was Ted Lasso.
Oh yeah,
and I remember when I was training for one of my Ironmans, you have to. Obviously the training is long. You'll have to do like a 6-hour bike ride some days and stuff. And so some of the time it's kind of it's dangerous to ride outside, and B, sometimes depending on the weather, it's just not really feasible. So you have got to do sometimes you'll have to do like a 6-hour training ride on a stationary bike. Yeah, exactly. On a stationary bike inside. And so, I have the way I have my bike set up is I have a TV in front of it. And so I was able to binge watch Ted Lasso while on my bike here not too long ago. And I thought that was probably my favorite show of all time. It's just like a lighthearted, funny, like feel good comedy.
Relatable in certain things too. And you're just like, a lot of themes you're just like kind of translating certain.
Yeah. So that's one that in the back of my mind, I've thought like, man, I should go back and watch that again. I never have,
sure.
but I guess that'd come closest to answering your question.
Yeah. No, that does, and it's funny because I'm very similar with movies.
Okay,
I rarely watch the same movie twice. Like I'm like unless it's been like multiple years, like a very long time. Maybe I've forgotten about it. And been like, oh, that's a great movie. Like my favorite movie ever is Remember the Titans.
Okay,
and I probably haven't seen it in 15 years, maybe. But like in my mind, that's my favorite movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I watched it now, I'm like, I don't want to ruin this. This is my favorite movie in my mind. But when it comes to shows, very kind of similar. One, Arrested Development is so funny.
Yeah, it was a
classic.
classic.
When they came out with the new episodes, I went and rewatched it back again.
Did?
Yeah, and my gosh, that show is funny. So
awesome.
yeah, and so I would say that's one of the ones that I've binged watched before. And then I've always liked the show Friends as well too.
Yeah,
we used to have like all the seasons growing up, and I could still like fire it up and like laugh at an episode or something like that. So those would probably be my two. But I'm similar. Like I just don't have the time to really sit down and binge watch things. Like
train for an Ironman.
I should look into that. Yeah, just get a stationary bike minimum. So I think that there's opportunity there. But I love Ted Lasso as well too. There's some there's some bangers out there for sure that I'm just like I probably missed a lot of shows too. If I'm being honest, like
absolutely.
Like every once in a while, people are like, "Oh, you should watch this," and I'm just like, okay, maybe I'll put it on my list that I haven't made. So, but anyway, appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, these episodes drop every Tuesday morning, so please set your calendar, set your watches to check this out as soon as it drops. You're gonna want to see these or listen to these ones. And Ryan, I'll let you play us out here.
As always, stay the course.
Thank you for joining us for the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Until next time, happy listening. And as always, stay the course. If you have a question or topic suggestions, please email us at podcast@alchemywealth.com. If you enjoyed today's discussion, subscribe to the podcast to ensure you never miss an episode. And consider leaving us a rating and review on your favorite platform. This helps other listeners like you find the show. For more resources, you can visit Alchemy Wealth Management's website at www.alchemywealth.com or find your Fiscal Physical, the book, on Amazon. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that personal finance is just that, personal. Please don't take anything we say as advice. The preceding content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not an offer or a solicitation, nor should it be construed or relied upon for tax, legal, or investment advice. It doesn't consider your personal financial situation or objectives and may not be suitable for you.